All right, the world of stem cells has been a very controversial one over the years, but there isn't much doubt that there are a wide range of uses for them, most of which are known to be available at the time of birth. But the type of stem cells that many people don't know about are the type of stem cells that are being found coming out of teeth. Really, starting in 2000, this new source of stem cells has been studied to see the benefits that they can provide. Provia Labs is one of the companies that is doing work in this area right now. Howard Greenman is the company's CEO, based in Boston, but he is down here in Philadelphia doing a little work. He's also a Wharton grad, and he joins us in the studio. And obviously for you, this is nice to be able to get back on campus for the first time in a while.
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. Thanks for having me on the show. And being back to the campus is really great. It's changed so much since I've been here last.
Yeah, I guess in some respects there is a misconception about stem cells in general because so much has been talked about embryonic stem cells and the controversy that kind of surrounds them.
Sure. You know, it's true that, over the last 10, 15 years, much of what we've heard about in the media has been the controversy around embryonic stem cells. And it's unfortunate because it's overshadowed some pretty amazing things that have been going on, using stem cells that don't come from embryos, that come naturally from our bodies. Many of your listeners might know someone who's had a bone marrow transplant.
Sure, yeah.
And, they've been doing those for about 60 years, saving lives. Those are stem cell treatments. There are stem cells in bone marrow that we've known about and have been used clinically for some time. And, if you have a young child, you're probably aware that there are also stem cells found in umbilical cord blood of newborn babies.
That's something that's really been a bigger push in the last few years.
That's right. Over the last 5 or 6 years, companies that have been working in this area have exploded because it's becoming part of mainstream medicine.
Sure.
People are now familiar and know that these cells in umbilical cord blood are treating diseases and saving lives.
Yeah.
The types of cells that you'll find in umbilical cord blood, they grow blood cells, similar to a type of cell that's in bone marrow. And as a result, they've been using umbilical cord blood stem cells as an alternative to bone marrow treatments for diseases like leukemia, anemia. And amazing, they've been saving lives. With teeth, when they were discovered about 10 years ago, they learned that inside baby teeth and wisdom teeth are another source of really valuable stem cells, although these are different. The stem cells in teeth, unlike the stem cells in cord blood, the stem cells in teeth grow solid tissue like bone and cartilage and muscle, cardiovascular tissue, even neural cells. They're the basis of an exploding field called regenerative medicine. The idea that you can use your own cells to grow new cells, tissue, organs, is that field. And these stem cells found in teeth are the source material for those types of therapies.
So how did this all kind of come about in terms of actually finding this?
Well, there were some scientists at the National Institutes of Health that were studying teeth.
Right.
And they discovered that inside baby teeth are these amazing cells. And subsequently, they learned that they were in wisdom teeth. And really, any youthful, healthy tooth, you can extract and harvest these valuable, solid tissue forming stem cells.
Yeah. So we're talking about obviously an area that really is in its infancy. When you think about it, we're talking about 10 or 15 years since really the first understanding of this. So, I mean, this is potential for huge growth and huge development in a lot of different ways to be able to help people out.
Yeah, I mean, infancy, yes and no. Yes, in the fact that we're learning new sources of stem cells like the cells in teeth.
Yep.
But no, in the fact that we've known about stem cells for so many years that there's been a tremendous amount of research up to this point from these different sources. And a great example of that is just like some of the stem cells in bone marrow are like the stem cells in cord blood, some of the stem cells in bone marrow are like the stem cells in teeth. They're called mesenchymal stem cells. They're the solid tissue forming stem cells. Since scientists have been aware of these stem cells for many years, there's been advancements in therapies that can use mesenchymal stem cells like what you find in teeth.
Yeah.
There's, I think last we checked, there's maybe over 300 active human clinical trials going on using mesenchymal stem cells from bone marrow. And they're used to treat things from diabetes to cardiovascular disease to spinal cord injury, to many of the things that happen over one's life of aging that degenerate in their bodies. These cells are used for regenerating those types of cells.
So we're talking about, I mean, a lot of potential diseases, I would think, that there could be cures for or treatments for, going forward here in the next couple of decades.
Yeah, I mean, think forward maybe 40, 50 years for a second. The life of, say, an 8-year-old child, as they grow older, they're going to deal with some of the biological processes of aging.
Yeah.
Right? Look, if they're lucky, they'll have some arthritis, only maybe a little back pain, and their teeth might degrade a little bit, and they'll need better glasses.
Yeah.
But for many people, they'll have more serious conditions with aging. They'll have diabetes or cardiovascular disease. And imagine in the future a world where that child has their own stem cells, perhaps stem cells that were collected when they were 8 or 9 years old, that haven't aged with them, that can be drawn from a repository used to treat them. Their body has aged, but their stem cells haven't. That's essentially what we deal with. We try and preserve those valuable stem cells in their current state, so down the road, when the child grows up and starts needing them, they have their youthful, healthful cells available for them.
Yeah, it's an interesting field. So how did, I guess, Provia come to really develop this StoraTooth, which is what it's...
The name of the service.
Yeah, the name of the service that you guys provide.
Well, we started looking at this back in 2006. I come from a business where we were using the same technologies but for a different purpose. Mm-hmm. We were collecting donated samples that were being used for research, mostly tumor samples.
Okay.
And I remember I was going to the dentist. I was getting my teeth looked at, and he started asking me questions as dentists do when they have stuff, where you can't really respond. And I told him what I did. He was very intrigued because just that week, a friend of his who was a researcher asked if he can get some donated teeth for her research. And she was studying how the stem cells inside these teeth can be used to grow new healthy teeth, which intrigued us. And so for a few years we started exploring this. We met and spoke with a number of researchers around the world that were studying teeth. We asked them all the same questions. Are you passionate about this? Is this the future? Consistently, we got feedback that this was breakthrough technology. And we'd always ask them if there was a service available that would allow them to store their children's teeth frozen so that they didn't age, would you buy it? And the consistent answer was if the researcher had a child, they already had their kid's teeth in their freezer. For us, that was an indication that this was real.
Yeah.
And we started developing our business plan and exploring the markets. And in 2010 is when we officially launched the company. We raised some investment. We started working on educating the dental community. We felt that was pretty critical. If the dental community wasn't aware and supportive, the field wouldn't develop. And so we spent a couple years investing in that. And now I think you'll find most dentists are aware of the technology and are supportive of it. And in 2012, we officially launched StoraTooth in the U.S. It's available now in Singapore and Central America through partners, and we have a growing sales force around the country that's getting our technology in the hands of oral surgeons and dentists. And the business is really taking off. It's very exciting.
It's interesting because of a variety of different factors. I'll get to those in a minute, but you brought up diabetes, and this is something we talked about on this show within the last couple of weeks about the growth of type 1 diabetes within children, and especially in bigger cities, in inner city locations. So from what I'm hearing here is this is an opportunity to really make an impact on a lot of this research we just saw come out within the last month or so.
Yeah, I think we have to be careful because it's very early. But I'll tell you a very interesting story. We go to a conference every year down in Florida. It's called the Children with Diabetes Conference.
Sure.
Families with kids that have type 1 come to learn about the new technologies, the new research, new products. And in 2009, we were there. And I was actually really surprised at how much of the presentations that were being done by the scientific community were all about stem cells. Stem cells in bone marrow, stem cells in cord blood. There was a paper published in 2009, 2010, I believe. Researchers overseas showed that stem cells from teeth, a baby tooth, were capable of growing into pancreatic-like islet cells that could produce insulin in response to glucose levels in the blood. I mean, a first of what might be hundreds and hundreds of steps towards a therapy.
Sure.
but a very important step. It shows how valuable these cells can be.
So as you mentioned, I mean, this is still, it seems like it's a process where you're still kind of learning a lot about the potential uses of the stem cells from teeth.
Yeah, it's very early. I mean, the folks who preserve their child's stem cells with us do so because they believe that the technology is developing and the future of regenerative medicine is huge.
Right.
They look at the research which we share with them, the studies that are being done, the clinical trials that are being done, and they make a choice to keep those cells available for what's going to happen in the future.
Right.
But to follow up on that story of the Children's of Diabetes Conference, there was a mom that came by our booth, having just watched a presentation about stem cells. Mm-hmm. Her child was, I think, 14 or 15, and she regrets not banking and preserving the cord blood from her child when the child was born. It was because it was very early then, and she didn't really understand how valuable the cells can be.
Yeah.
And she was so upset about that. But when she learned that there was now another source of stem cells that could be preserved, she came over and gave me a hug, because for 7 years after the child was diagnosed, she's been living with that regret. Mm. And it was amazing because her kid was having her wisdom teeth removed in like a couple of weeks.
Yeah. And
if we weren't at that conference, she would have never known about it.
So a lot of this is obviously dealing with a child's baby teeth when they have them, and they're naturally going to fall out at some point. To be able to basically have a relationship with Provia, with StoraTooth, to be able to store these away and have them available for whenever they're needed.
That's right. It's baby teeth and wisdom teeth.
Okay.
We do a lot of work with the oral surgery community, because when wisdom teeth are being extracted, it's a great opportunity for the oral surgery community to help us inform the market.
Sure.
They tell their patients about this. And so a lot of our teeth are wisdom teeth that come in. A lot of them are baby teeth. Some of them are teeth that are removed in advance of the child getting braces.
Okay.
As long as there's a healthy blood supply and there's healthy pulp, we can extract stem cells from them.
So how does this all happen in terms of if somebody wants to do this and take this a next step? How do they do it, and what's the process that you kind of go through? Obviously, people may have build a relationship, but they may not have their children's teeth fall out for a few years,
That's right.
at that point. So I guess it's, in some respects, it's a little bit of proactiveness on the parents' perspective.
That's right. And so when it's actually pretty incredible technology, but covered up by a very simple process.
Okay.
If there's a family that wants to preserve their child's dental stem cells, and they've decided they're going to do it, they would simply enroll with us, and we would send them a kit. They bring the kit with them to the dentist office.
Okay.
The dentist is informed by us in advance. Usually they're already online with us, because we have thousands of dentists around the country that are already doing this.
Right.
But if not, we tell them what it's all about and train them over the phone. The dentist puts the tooth, when it's removed, into our kit, and we have a courier that arrives at the dentist office that afternoon to pick up the kit.
Yeah.
It's sent overnight to our laboratory. It's tested for sterility and for cell viability. We take the cells out. In many cases, we'll do cell expansion, which means we'll grow the cell volume.
Okay.
We have a class 10,000 clean room. We do everything under FDA guidelines for human cell and tissue products. And we expand the cells so that we have a large enough volume to freeze them safely, but also we can take cells out of that population and test them using a pretty cool technology called flow cytometry, which is lasers that kind of float through the cells to tell us what the cells are really all about.
Right.
And that's how we're allowed to tell our clients that we actually have mesenchymal stem cells for them in the bank. And then we freeze them, and then they're there forever.
And whenever somebody might potentially need them, if some issue comes up, then they're able to do something with them.
Yeah, they call us up. They have a physician prescription for cell therapeutic in the future, and then we would deliver the cells to wherever the cells would be processed in preparation for treatment.
What happens with let's just say somebody has agreed to do this, and they've sent you a couple of the wisdom teeth or baby teeth or whatever it might be. And obviously, I guess at this point, it's so new that we don't know, but what would potentially happen if there is no need for those stem cells down the road?
Yeah, so we'll keep them forever until the client tells us not to.
Okay.
once the cells are frozen, all biological activity stops.
Sure.
So they're safe.
Yeah.
They're safe forever. We believe, however, with kind of the broad use of these cells, that it's just a matter of time before everyone will be using them if they have them banked.
Sure.
We might not see use of these cells for a few years, but we're going to start seeing them pretty soon. In fact, we have a client. I'm not going to go into too many details for confidentiality reasons, but we have a client who was in an accident and has a severe condition, and we have their dental stem cells in our bank, and their surgeon wants to do an experimental treatment using the stem cells that we have to potentially save the child's life.
Right.
The disorder's neurological, and dental stem cells are specifically strong at growing neural cells. So we're going through the process with the surgeon to file an investigational new drug application with the FDA, and hopefully get the process to prepare those cells ready, approved by the FDA as an experimental compassionate use to hopefully help this child. And that might happen within a year or so. It's not as far off as one might think.
What is in what is the kit actually that once somebody signs up that they will receive?
It's actually pretty simple. It's a white box. Inside the kit is some FedEx materials, and in case it has to be shipped through FedEx.
Yeah.
But the core of it is two parts. There's a cooling component, so there's material that needs to be put in the freezer, and it helps keep the sample cool as it's delivered from the dentist office to our laboratory. Yeah. But the other part is this little container. It was invented by one of our founders over 20 years ago. It's called a Save-A-Tooth. Similar name as Store-A-Tooth. Yeah. And what this kit does is it was designed and meant to make sure a tooth that gets knocked out, say on the baseball field, can be brought to the hospital and saved, put back in the body, and kept. Yeah. So it's got all the basics to keep cells in a tooth alive. So we've basically borrowed that technology and use it to transport teeth from the dentist's office to the lab. Very fortunate that we had access to this technology because it's been proven, it's FDA approved for this purpose, and so very, very good stuff.
It's interesting because we've talked a little bit about the medical possibilities that are there, but you touched on it earlier. Is that this has the potential to basically regenerate teeth or make new teeth for people who may have lost a tooth, whether it be on the baseball field or in the process of their life.
Well, from my understanding, and I'm not a scientist, but from my understanding, regenerating a tooth is really hard. Yeah. They're going to be working on that for quite a while. Okay. So many components of a tooth. It's possible, but it's going to take a while. I think before that, we're going to see something related, which is the growing of bone around, say, an implanted tooth to make sure that implanted tooth stays secure and can last for much longer than it normally would. They're actually doing stuff like that in humans today. There's some folks in Europe that have grown bone in the jaw of patients using dental stem cells, and there's multiple year follow-up data that the procedure worked really well, was safe and effective. Right. So they're actually growing bone, dental bone, to treat periodontal disease and so forth already using these cells. Now, how long that takes to get to be common practice? Sure. That's a matter of business and promotion and so forth, but we know it's safe and effective.
You mentioned the relationships with the dentist, which obviously is a big part of this as well. I would imagine that's kind of an ongoing process in terms of trying to continue to grow. As you mentioned, a lot of dentists know about this, but to be able to get people involved, get these other dentists involved, and maybe put this forward as an option for somebody if they would like to do this.
That's right. We as a business and as a technology are faced with that challenge of market awareness. Most people have no idea there are stem cells in teeth. Many people don't even know there's stem cells in cord blood.
I didn't know that there were stem cells in teeth till about a month ago.
Right, exactly. How do people find out about this? And we've looked at a lot of different pathways to informing the market, but we concluded the best way is through the dentist. Yeah. Working with oral surgeons, working with pediatric dentists, working with general practitioners, hygienists, a periodontist. When they see a patient who will be faced with the option of either discarding a tooth that's removed or perhaps saving these potentially life-saving cells, right? Most of those dentists and surgeons and so forth that we have spoken to feel somewhat compelled to make this available to their patient.
Sure.
Because it is the patient's choice. And if they don't share it with the patient, they basically made the choice for the patient.
Right. But obviously the understanding of a lot of people now in terms of cord blood and knowing how important it is to try and bank that,
Yep.
in some respects, I would think helps this process along in terms of getting the idea out or at least having the understanding that it's similar to dental stem cells.
I mean, absolutely. I'd say, our job would be infinitely harder if the cord blood industry hadn't started years ago.
Yeah.
Because most people who have young children are now aware that the concept of stem cells in their child's body is real.
Yeah.
And whether they bank stem cells from cord blood or not, they get it. I'd say many, I don't know the exact percentage, but a good percentage of the customers that are currently banking with us did bank their cord blood.
Sure, yeah.
And see this not as an alternative, but more of a complementary service. And then a number of people contact us who wanted to bank their cord blood, but for whatever reason they couldn't. Either they didn't have the financial resources at the time, or, in many cases, cord blood banking, you want to do it, but you can't because of unforeseen circumstances with the pregnancy. So they come to us kind of as another chance to make sure they have cells for their child.
Sure, yeah.
So we thank the cord blood industry. They're sister industry to us, and we always tell our customers, bank everything you can.
Yeah. How effective do the researchers think that this can be going forward? Because obviously cord blood is growing, the idea of saving it and banking it, and we're seeing it more and more these days. How effective do they think that this aspect of it can be?
Transformative.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. Because just like cord blood stem cells became an alternative to bone marrow that are easy to access, that can be done for the patient themselves or the family, dental stem cells and their solid tissue forming characteristics can be an alternative to bone marrow transplants as well for regenerative medicine. But they'll be used for yourself. You'll be able to use your own cells. There won't be anti-rejection medicine that's necessary. There won't be complications of using someone else's cells.
Sure.
You can use your own for the types of things that bone marrow is being studied for today.
And bone marrow gets used on a daily basis. At some point,
right,
at some place around the country, somebody is having something done with bone marrow.
Yeah, for kind of the already proven and approved therapies, thousands a year, tens of thousands a year.
Yeah.
The new therapies that are coming out that are being studied in clinical trials are so broad across so many different conditions that if they get approved,
sure,
you're going to see bone marrow cells and specifically mesenchymal stem cells from bone marrow being used all the time by many different people and many different clinicians over the next 10 or 15 years. And our expectation is that since teeth are a source of the same kind of cell, teeth ultimately one day will be an alternative to those therapies that you can use using your own cells.
I was going to ask you if that was a possibility to make them an alternative because of the fact that, look, people's teeth fall out. That's just part of life. And it would seem to be, in some cases, maybe an easier option.
I mean, that's the hope. The goal would be to show that stem cells from teeth can be used in the same way that stem cells from bone marrow are used.
Sure.
Work would need to be done to do that.
Right.
They need to be approved and so forth. But that's the expectation. And that's why people will bank. And that's why they are banking.
Okay. Store a Tooth, the website is?
www.store-a-tooth.com.
Okay. And for people that would like to get more information about that, you can check out that website. Twitter as well?
We have a Twitter account. We have a LinkedIn account, a Facebook account. We have a toll-free number. It's 877-867-5753. We have an entire call center of clinical consultants that are there just to allow people to make informed decisions. So feel free to contact them and ask them questions.
And they can find out what the process is, the costs all associated with that. Right. And I would imagine it's like cord blood. It's initial investment and then a managing fee for every year that you're involved in it.
That's right, and it's slightly less expensive than cord blood, and we have a variety of different programs because we want to make this something that is available to everyone regardless of their financial resources.
Sure, great. Well, it was a very, I loved having the conversation with you. Great to have you back on campus, and obviously all the best going forward. It's obviously a very, very important possibilities that we're looking at here in the years to come.
Thank you very much.
Howard Greenman, as we mentioned, the CEO of Provia Labs and the company Store a Tooth. As he mentioned, look, if you've ever had a child, especially in the last few years, and it has been brought to your attention about banking your cord blood, you'll understand the importance of that, and you'll have a better understanding of the importance of this as well. All right, going to take a break, and as we mentioned last